officially to the second half of the season. As of recording this, only a few games into the second half of the season for anybody wondering, but that means that we just a little bit ago wrapped up All-Star Weekend and a few takeaways from it. Obviously, we're going to dive into that. We're also going to talk about a debatably developing situation with Zion, and then do a few predictions for what we think will happen at the end of 2022. But let's start with the All-Star recap stuff. I think, honestly, the most and I get it, everyone's going to be like, well, Curry making the, All-Star game record with threes is super crazy. But to me, I think one of the more impressive things of the weekend was Karl Anthony Towns winning the three-point contest.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to me, the three-point contest has been the best event essentially
Sure.
in the skills Saturday for years now at this point. I mean, I just flashed back to that one where Curry went crazy in the last round and had all that pressure on him and still came through and won. I mean, obviously, I think it goes without saying the amount of shooting talent in the NBA right now is ridiculous. Like, you can see these guys really light it up. And so, but yeah, I mean, shout out to Karl Anthony Towns putting on for the big man. I know that instantly the Timberwolves Twitter was like, greatest shooting big man of all time. And there were a lot of Dirk fans who weren't too thrilled about
Well,
that.
and he was the first big man to win it since Kevin Love in 2012. And to what you were just saying, he's the second tallest behind Dirk. So it's like,
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting with Dirk because Dirk, I mean, Towns is like a true five. And so I think that's what they mean in big man, where, I mean, because Dirk wasn't really playing the five like that.
Sure.
And even Kevin Love, like Karl Anthony Towns and Kevin Love have massively different games.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, though, like to be in the category with those guys. And so I get the argument there that it's like, yeah, I mean, what he does from the 3-point arc or from beyond the 3-point arc, night in and night out for Minnesota, it certainly is. Like,
Well,
again, we're in a new era.
I thought it was a classy move too. That I guess when you do the 3-point contest, or I think any kind of NBA activity on a court, you're not allowed to really wear jewelry, but the NBA let Karl Anthony Towns wear, I think it was like a necklace or something that was from his mom who passed away from COVID. So I know he was appreciative of that, which is kind of a cool little nod that he was allowed to do that.
No, yeah, definitely. That was good for Karl Anthony Towns. I like that. The skills challenge, which is actually an event that I really like as well, though I don't know what the hell this was this year. I mean, shout out to Evan Mobley and Darius Garland and Jared Allen for winning
That's pretty cool.
What this was in the skills contest. It's dope though that they won it, obviously, with the event being in Cleveland.
Right.
The hometown guys got to put on for their city. Cleveland has been one of the best stories in the NBA this year in terms of their rapid rise, how young, how likable they are. And then so, obviously this is just kind of some icing on the cake to, validity, or just, bring that even more validity where it's like, yeah, no, they're here. They're ready to compete. The city gets to really celebrate these guys the way they should.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was cool. The dunk contest was all right, I guess. It was what it was.
Stop it. I appreciate you being the nice guy here, but you don't need to say it's all right. It was terrible. It was awful. Shout out to Obi Toppin for winning it. No disrespect to Obi, but no, the dunk contest was terrible. They got to shelve it. I'm tired.
Yeah.
The dunk contest is a bad event at this point. Yeah, but it doesn't exist. I don't know what they can do. The only good dunk contest recently, if we're being honest, was LaVine and Aaron Gordon. LaVine and Aaron Gordon was a show. Like, that was
well, you saw them tweeting
incredible.
too. Well, I think it was Aaron Gordon that was tweeting more than LaVine, but they were tweeting. Like, somebody posted it, and Gordon's like, I still want my trophy.
He should get his trophy. It's ridiculous. Aaron Gordon has one of the best dunks all time in the entire contest and doesn't have a trophy either of those years.
Sure.
Derrick Jones Jr. needs to give him a trophy more than Zach LaVine does, but I truly believe he should have won the LaVine year too. And LaVine, the first year he was in it the year before, was awesome as well. But largely for the most part, the dunk contest, it's just not that fun anymore because everybody's done everything. Like, there's
how can
not
you do
really
anything
much
more?
you can do, even in terms of props at this point. Like, unless there's just a timely prop, there's not much you can add to it. We've seen people jump over tons of different people
Cars.
of all sizes. Blake Griffin jumped over a car, right? Like, there's just nothing you can do. There's the only things remotely I could say to make this better would be you bring in those YouTube guys, people who are just freak athletes that are able to do better dunks than some of these players are. Or
Whose
you just
life
make
is devoted to doing those dunks,
right,
like,
like
yeah.
you're just strictly in the art of dunking, exactly. Or at that point, what I think maybe unless you get star power, that's the only other way I can see it.
Mm.
Like if you have it where if Ja Morant and Anthony Edwards and you somehow get LeBron to do it in his advanced stage, and you
But
have
even
like
to
a true
me,
high power dunk contest.
sure.
But even then, but that to me as well, like I'm in the same boat because I feel like I already know what you're going to say. That still has the potential for a massive letdown. They're not going to do anything that they haven't already done.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there were two other things about All-Star weekend that I was kind of confused about and wondering if you maybe had any more insight on your end that you think could be there. But I thought it was weird that Chris Paul played actually a few minutes when apparently he had a fracture on his thumb. Like, I know he only
Yeah.
played for 2 minutes and whatever,
Well,
but like it's still like, yo. And then on top of that, the other side of things is if you look at Team LeBron, right?
mhm.
Chris Paul only played 2 minutes. Again, I chalk that up to the fractured thumb thing, but even so, then it's like, bro, why even play 2 minutes at that point? And then on top of it, Jimmy and Fred only playing 9 minutes compared to everybody else that's like in the 20s. And I get it, you got to divvy that up. But then today I'm seeing this story of Jimmy's being fined 25 for violating league rules after for not, really talking to the media and doing interviews afterwards. So like my conspiracy hat's on. It's like, oh, was he pissed he didn't play that much? Like what happened?
Oh, I have nothing in terms of that. I mean, because Jimmy Butler's been dealing with injuries on and
Yeah.
off all year, and so I
And so
think
that
to
it could be
me,
that too. Yeah.
and that's kind of what I think it is. I think it's more of him just being like, "Hey, this is an all-star game. Like, let me get in here. I'll play a little bit. Like, I care about it, but you don't
Sure.
need to play me the 20 plus minutes tonight. Let the guys who want to play because you always every single year there's always somebody who wants to really play in the all-star game, and
You
you can
let them
tell
do
who
it.
wants to and who it means more for. And so it's like, yeah, let them play, let them have the fun. Um, in terms of my bad, forgive me. What before you said Jimmy, there was one thing.
Chris Paul and his fractured thumb.
Right. And that was weird too. I agree. Now, again, I forget when the diagnosis came down, but it
Sure.
seemed late. So I get because he was going to be in town no matter what for the NBA
If you can't,
75.
yeah. But
So if you can't get a replacement at that point, like I get him playing in the game, but it's like you literally check in and check out essentially. Like do a ceremonial thing, wave to the crowd, be like, we appreciate you. But like, yeah, Chris Paul not being able to play for 6 to 8 weeks, but getting 2 minutes in an all-star game,
mhm.
like again, it's an all-star game. More than likely nothing crazy is gonna happen. But on that off chance that something happens,
Could you
when you're
imagine?
Phoenix and you're
Yeah.
probably the best team in the NBA right now, and you're Chris Paul and you're desperately trying to win your first championship, it would have been a pretty big disaster to say the least.
It would have not been a great look, which I mean it's not. I mean we're not there, so that's great. But yeah, I was reading that and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding this situation or something. But it seems like I wouldn't have wanted him on the court at all if I'm a Suns fan. Like I get it, All Star, and you're there, and maybe they don't have enough time to find somebody else. But yeah, dude, like come on.
Yeah, and the Elam ending was great though. I think that's one of the true winners here because I think you saw it in the right. We talked a little bit last episode about the Rising Stars Challenge, and I think it was a winner there. And I think it's a winner in the actual All Star game itself. Like just the fourth
Hmm.
quarter when they're trying to hit that target score, the intensity ratchets up. Like we've seen it now multiple years.
Yeah.
Like this is a proven winner. It makes it worth watching. It allows for cool signature moments to happen. LeBron getting the buzzer beater in Cleveland and his return was obviously a really cool moment. A really tough shot as well. So just
Hmm.
all the credit for that falling. And then I mean Steph Curry is just I mean he's already when Steph Curry's on a heater, it's just such an
Yeah.
insane, beautiful thing to watch. But I mean, him going on the heater the way he did at the All Star game, like I mean, he was hitting everything from everywhere. He's the perfect type of player for an All Star game. Like that's exactly who you want to like Steph Curry just is the player that can put on a show the most, if that makes sense as well. Like at the end of the day, I know it's a sport, but basketball is entertainment as well. When Steph Curry's hitting, I don't think there's anybody like it. I mean, I remember that picture of Iverson and Reggie and Dwayne Wade calling it just all going crazy because it is like it, it's a spiritual experience when Steph Curry goes crazy. What can you say?
Yeah, you just got to let it happen and sit back and watch at that point. So All-Star game was fun, but obviously now the focus shifts on playoffs and the second half of the season.
Yeah, it was a good weekend in Cleveland. Like I said, I think that I really enjoy how it does feel like they've improved the game itself. Because there was a while where it was stale. I mean, it just there was a good while where I think it was the most disappointing part of the weekend. You liked everything else except that. And now we're at the point where it's like, number one, can we put the skills competition back to the way it was? It was fine. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Dunk contest was rough. But yeah, a couple of cool moments as well. Steph Curry winning All-Star Game MVP was great for the Kobe Trophy, and just NBA 75. Like that's the one thing that I think the league just knocked out of the park here. Again, before we kind of close the page and move on to the second half, like, you saw in the TNT pregame Shaq comments how much that meant to him, but it was just seeing all these legends in one place, all the behind the scenes photos, just all the little moments that happen that you maybe appreciate. Like, you get Dwayne Wade and Dirk talking about the 2011 finals kind of
Yeah.
together for the first time. You get Ray, and it's funny because when Ray Allen walks by, everybody does the memes, but Paul Pierce posts a picture of him and Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, like maybe the first time that they've been back together in quite a while. Maybe there's finally some history is over with there. I loved MJ showing up because there was a while where, again, he was at the Daytona 500 earlier in the day. It was just kind of like, is he really not going to make it? Like, this is Michael Jordan. You can't have the NBA 75 without Michael Jordan. And I appreciate it. And I think it's sad because the one thing that obviously was missing was Kobe. Like, Kobe,
Sure.
you could feel his absence. But in a way, I almost think that's kind of made MJ softer in his old age, where like it was cool seeing him, doing the whole signature, like hug everybody from behind. Like, he's going up and he's ambushing Jerry West and he's running up on Luca and all these other, it's cool to see those moments. I love seeing LeBron and Jordan together, like at the top of the pantheon, because, there are those two guys and Kareem being there. And, it was just an incredible moment, like all around. That to me was probably the coolest part of the weekend when all was said and done. Like, obviously post pandemic and with everything else going on in the world, like to have all of that much NBA greatness and decades and everybody from the pioneers and the early guys through the 80s and up till now. It was a really cool. It was cool to see all those. I loved all the footage coming out from that. I love everything else that we're going to see coming out from that. That to me as well, I think we got to hit as one of the key parts of the weekend. But just like that, we're on to the second half. I mean, this is essentially, it's crazy, just like this is I consider this more essentially post All-Star break. Like, we're in season 9. We say that with the podcast right now, but like this really is our more or less 9-year anniversary because, the first season of the show, we did a half a season essentially. Because I remember, basically the conversation we had when we were going to start the podcast with you and me and Tim, and shout out to Tim, obviously, always. It was right after that awful dunk contest where they were doing it in teams and stuff, essentially like that. But we caught the second half of the year. The first finals we covered was the last Spurs championship when they beat the Heat the last year of the Big Three. So crazy. But I always, second half, this is when it really, we kind of started. I think that was one of the fun parts of doing the first season of the podcast, is like, it already was ratcheted up. You know what I mean? Like, we were post trade deadline, we were post, even buyout season and stuff like that. So, it really, this is the fun part of the year. This is what we're waiting for. This is when NBA, like, especially the way it's set up, really starts to matter. We'll get into some of those second half predictions in a little bit. But welcome everybody to the Driving Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
I believe Joe Ingles. I've always believed in you. # coffee buddies.
Okay, so I'm deciding if I want to go with the Aussie angle or if I want to go with the old Utah Jazz teammate angle. And I'm going to go with the Jazz teammate angle and say Mike Conley.
Okay. So I think in a way this is going to throw you for a loop because I don't think... So he's on Portland right now. I'll give you that.
Okay, so he's on Joe Ingles' new team.
Yes.
Is it Josh Hart?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Nice. Josh Hart tweets a lot. At that point, I'm like, okay, Portland kept Josh Hart. Josh Hart tweets a lot. So, okay, great.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, though, like out of coffee buddies, like if you were going to go to get coffee with somebody, obviously Jimmy Butler is a nod, people would say, because he has the coffee love. But I think, like, I was thinking about this a little bit ago. If I were going to have coffee with an NBA player, the two players I would want to go with, and I know I'm going to get dragged for this a little bit. I'd want to go with Delhi, or I'd want to go with Corver. And I feel like it's just because they've been on some crazy teams, and I'm just hearing.
He's not even playing anymore. He's
I
not an
know.
active player.
Well, Delhi's down in Australia, but
Delhi's in Australia. Yeah, neither's Delhi. Yeah, I guess you're right.
But like still, like they were on some crazy teams, and I'm sure they have some crazy locker room stories, and that's what I would want to go to coffee for, is like hear those stories. Just start talking, you know?
So my coffee power rankings off top are, I mean, you got to have Jimmy on there. Like you said, you got to have Jimmy with the big face coffee thing. Boris Diaw had an espresso machine
the
in his
espresso
locker.
machine.
So Boris Diaw retired, obviously, at this point.
But he'd have some wild stories too, I'm sure.
Yeah, Boris Diaw was great. He was on a bunch of great Phoenix teams. He was on San Antonio when they were winning the title. Boris Diaw would be great. I'm trying to think of who else is like a big no. I mean, for me personally, like, because obviously, like, you know me, I'm a big sneaker guy. Like PJ Tucker's top of the list just to talk. I would literally just talk about sneakers for 3 hours.
Sure.
Or I guess that'd be the longest coffee chat of all time. But
what's the rules on a coffee chat? Once the coffee's cold, you got to leave or something?
Well, it's like coffee's like the first date. You can only go out for like an hour and a half. If it goes really well, like 2 hours, I guess. But at that point, I feel like after a while, you're just almost obligated to move on to another activity. You know?
Yeah, you got to go. You got to go.
Or you
got to
get food. If you get food, it's different, I guess. But
yeah. So, all right. Well, that's interesting.
I want coffee now, but yeah, that's probably my list off the top. But if I'm going strictly coffee, I'm looking at Jimmy and I'm looking at Diaw. Those are the top two right away.
I like it. I like it.
Did I say to leave us a review on the podcast yet? I don't think so. Leave us a review on the podcast, good or bad. We'll read them here on the show. If you're not an iTunes user, Google Play Store speaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Amazon Music, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yes, and follow us on YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast. We're actually going to be doing a midweek pack rip from Top Shots, so that should be fun. We'll see where it goes. Obviously, the cards or the moments that we get will dictate where it goes, so that'll be fun.
That's right. Me and Justin are top shotters, baby. No,
the NFT, the NFT game, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so Zion. This isn't anything new. It is something new, but it isn't anything new in a way. So the All-Star break, I guess this is where this part of the story kind of picks up. They asked CJ about, Zion, and CJ McCollum said something along the lines of, I haven't had a conversation with him directly. I've spoken with people close to him. And it kind of went from there. We got JJ Redick talking about how he's a disconnected teammate, and if you're trying to be a leader, that's not great. I think it's worth mentioning Zion's really young for this part of the conversation. Kendrick Perkins had some comments that Pelicans fans got mad at. I was actually listening to a space on Twitter the other day that Perk got in with a bunch of mainly Pelicans fans, and they were talking about him and his comments. And
Perk wanted to move the team.
That's what I mean. Oh, yeah, that's what I mean.
Out of New Orleans.
They wanted him to move, which, they were saying things, which actually, by the way, bad take, and to the credit of the space that I was listening to, their whole thing's like, look at the attendance records for this year. Look at the attendance records for this year. And I'm going to pull it up real quick. I want to read this off to you. I'll read the bottom 10. Okay. The bottom, or I guess technically be the bottom, bottom 10. So bottom 10 teams. And you tell me which one, maybe two, shouldn't be on this list. So 21 on the list, Pelicans. Okay. Then below them, you have Rockets, Pistons, Grizzlies, Wizards, Magic, Spurs, Thunder, Pacers, Kings.
Wait, the Grizzlies are where?
24th.
That's great. I mean,
behind the Pistons, behind the Rockets, behind the Pelicans, behind the Timberwolves.
So there does need to be some context here. Because for example, they're behind Houston. Houston is a significantly bigger city.
I agree.
I think Memphis feels packed every night, and I think that arena is going to be packed come playoff time. Like, it's jarring because they're good, and that arena should be sold out every single night. That Grizzlies team is an absolute ball to watch. I do think Memphis is a smaller city that
Sure.
supports their team. Now, do not get me wrong; that is in no disrespect to Memphis at all. But I don't read as much into that. And I think come playoff time, it's
Yeah.
going to be packed out. And it's going to be loud come
Well,
playoff time.
but they're I think from the Pelican standpoint, what their take on that is you're saying the Pelicans aren't having fans show up and they should move the team. The Pelicans on an average have more fans than the Grizzlies, who are still a small market team, and you're not talking about them moving because they're playing well.
Well, right. Moving the team out of New Orleans it's a clown discussion. Like New Orleans, the city of New Orleans is not the problem with the Pelicans. The problem with the Pelicans is they've just kind of been poorly run since they've been in New Orleans. Like it's a franchise that just frankly hasn't really ever been that good.
Can you, by the way,
they got with Anthony Davis, the second round, they had the same deal with when they had Chris Paul and David West. Like there's been good squads there, but I mean, there hasn't been a track record of success there. But again, that's not the city's fault. When they win games, they're going to show up. New Orleans supports the Saints. Like it's obviously culturally. I've never been to New Orleans, believe it or not. It's the one place in the South that I feel like I haven't been to living in Florida. I really want to go. I'm missing out. Listen, people love New Orleans. Like I think NBA players love New Orleans as well. So I don't think that we don't need to be moving teams out of New Orleans, period.
No. Now there is an angle from the fan standpoint of New Orleans that I wanted to bring up here. This is Darren Rovell put this out for Mardi Gras. Did you see this? I
don't think so.
The Zion float. No. So I'll pull this up. This is not one way to make sure your star stays. In my opinion, which again, who knows what's going on, who knows what's actually happening with this, but look, and this is obviously going to be on YouTube, so I'll do my best to describe this, but this is Darren Rovell's tweet here. This is the video of it. You can see it's this Mardi Gras, they're doing their thing, tractor pulling the whole float. Okay. So it says supersized down there in the corner. You can see that?
Mm-hmm.
As it starts going, you can kind of see up in the corner, is that Zion? That might be Zion. And it says Zion contract there with a ton of money everywhere. And then what looks like a very overweight person. And it says 1 ton on the shirt.
Oh, no.
And then in the corner, you can see at the top, it says, I'm hungry.
Yeah, that's not it. That's mean.
Dude. And I think he's holding a sub up in the corner there. It's like, dude, this is not one way to keep your star. This is not. So, like, you have you have the CJ McCollum situation going on, and now you have this. Well, again, this is from the 24th. Like, this is 2 days ago as of recording this for us.
But I think this all needs to be cleaned up, and that's where I do think there's fault on both sides. Like, that parade float is gross. Like, just the weight jokes that too.
It's like, come on, man,
that's not the way to go.
Well, but so
I mean, JJ Redick's. I think first CJ's comments, and I think JJ Redick's, kind of monologue, if you will, on First Take is when this really stepped, because CJ McCollum or JJ Redick, excuse me, played with Zion in New Orleans. Like this is somebody that he knows personally.
There's some weight to what JJ said.
Yeah, I mean, JJ Redick laid into him. He just says, that you have a responsibility to take care of yourself, to take care of your body. But I mean, and again, this was on ESPN. He said, quote, "This is just a complete lack of investment in your team, in your organization, your city.
Yeah.
You just traded for one of the 50 best players in the league in CJ McCollum." He's referencing there. A guy who's supposed to be paired with you, reach out and say hello. It's a pattern of behavior. Like a lot of the injury stuff obviously is, it's mutual frustration. I think Zion is frustrated that he can't get on the court. I think Pelicans fans are obviously frustrated because when Zion Williamson gets on the court, he is a definitive
Well, and
superstar.
Zion,
like he's that guy when he plays.
And
he isn't playing.
And if I'm Zion, I'm a little frustrated with the team making the announcement of when he's coming back and how that's going so much more confusing, because half the time it sounds like he's coming back next week, and then next thing you're hearing he's getting surgery, and then he's having things happen where he can't get on the court. So it's like the team's got to stop throwing him under the bus a little bit too, in a way. Like that does feel like what's happening too.
He and Griffin haven't clicked, and I get the frustration because, again, he's played 86 games. Like, he's played less than Greg Oden played in his first 3 years. Like, there is genuine, real concern with Zion Williamson at this point. He is undeniably good when he's been on an NBA basketball court. Like, looks every bit of the superstar number one pick that he was promised to be, but it's real at this point. And I mean, we're looking at this season, like, this is gradually. Zion was supposed to be practicing in December. It's February 26th when we're recording this episode. He's
Y-
not really like, he doesn't look like he's any closer to coming back. The weight is a bit of a concern when you're dealing with a foot injury that now may require another round of surgery. Like, I understand the team is definitely not handled the Zion situation the way they needed to as well. But I will give the team some credit. They've gone out and traded for CJ McCollum. They've still
Mm-hmm.
got Brandon Ingram. They're trying to give Zion reasons to stay. They're enticing him to build with the team. I mean, the Pelicans are playing in a play-in spot right now. They've played significantly better since their pretty abysmal start to the season.
They had
Those
a good
first
win
10
against the
games or so.
Suns. They had a good win against the Suns the
Right,
other
like,
night.
the Pelicans are in position to play meaningful basketball. This
Mm-hmm.
is what you've been looking for, is to get Zion
Well,
and this whole younger group that they have right now to play meaningful basketball, to put them in the
and
position going forward. And again, the fact that Zion's been totally MIA, like, I do think if you're invested in this team, if you're going to be a leader of this team, if you're going to be a best player, I do agree with JJ Redick. Like,
you
at
have to
least just
care.
reach out and say what's up. And now I will say the next day after, we saw Zion post a picture with him and his two teammates and talking about that, they're in this together. And I think that's a good sign. Like, Zion Williamson's a kid at the end of the day. He's not even
Well, and
25 years old yet.
and so there's a few things I wanted to bring up. One, I know we're doing our predictions down the line at the end of this episode, but I think one of our predictions could be that if the Pelicans are putting it together like we think they could, one of our predictions could be them playing for a play-in spot and potentially making the playoffs. I think that's a fair prediction to have. If you look at the teams that are above them right now, there's a fair chance. So
Yeah.
to that, I wonder. I mean, my brothers are kind of like this too, where they're kind of like not aloof, but just like disinterested. But it's not that it's just it comes off that they're disinterested. So I wonder if it's just like a younger person thing to be the way that is. Like if my brothers were in the NBA, they probably do the same thing where they wouldn't reach out to the guy until they met him in person, Like it just wouldn't be a thing that would cross their mind. And I know sports, the mentality, the teammate thing, that's totally different. But I wonder, like Ben Simmons, do you think he would have also been doing that if players came on to the Sixers or now the Nets? You know what I mean?
Wait, what do you mean? No, I
Like,
don't actually. What do you mean?
like if another player goes on to the Nets, if they they say the trade deadline wasn't over and they traded and they got someone, do you think Ben Simmons is texting that guy?
I don't think necessarily, but I think, again, it's what do you want to be in the
Yeah,
locker room? And to me, it's like, if you're Zion, if you're going to be a foundational piece of this culture, like, is it his responsibility to be this leader? No, not necessarily, but it's also just some of it that's given to you with being
you
that
have
good of a
to.
player in
Yeah,
the
you
NBA.
have
Like, you
to.
just have to embrace some of it, for better or for worse. Again, I don't think there is a lot of reading too much into this. Like, I don't think
I
this is the
agree.
end of the world, but it's the problem with Zion is that there's been so many things with, his relationship being fractured, with him not taking care of himself off the court, with him already trying to force his way out of the organization and play in a bigger market. Like,
Yeah.
these are just, there's starting to be a little too much smoke. And, like, at some point, I'm going to have to believe there's fire there somewhere. I think New Orleans is absolutely on the clock with Zion, but I think New Orleans is doing what you would want them to do if you're Zion, especially when you go out and make a move for somebody like CJ McCollum. Again, if you're Zion, you got to hope he can get healthy. And you got to evaluate the situation before you just decide to bolt and panic. It's like, why would Zion? Like, Zion has barely played in New Orleans. How is he going to properly evaluate the situation? And honestly, with him not, like, I understand his talent still, and somebody's going to take a swing on him, but it's like, are you really in the position right now to be demanding your way to a bigger
Well,
market when you can't get on the basketball court?
and on top of that, depending on the team that might be pulling him over, is like, are you going to be surrounded by better talent than what you have right now with the Pelicans? Like, I'm intrigued by that lineup. I do want to see them play. So where are you going to go? Who's going to get you, and who's going to be around you that is more intriguing? I don't know. That could be an off-season discussion, but still, something that has to happen at some point. I also wanted to point this out because we had the attendance record for this season by ranking for City. How many West Coast teams do you think are in the top 10?
Hang on. Give me Are teams in Texas West Coast by this definition?
Oh, so by conference. Sorry. Do
Oh, by
it by
conference. Okay.
yeah. Sorry, conference. Yep.
Um,
East Coast, yeah. Eastern Conference, Western Conference.
I think 4.
You're over.
Wow, really?
So, yeah. There's only 2.
So Golden State.
No.
Really?
Golden State's 11.
Wow, that one actually is. So are the Lakers there?
Lakers are 6.
Okay, Lakers are the obvious one, and then who's the other
Jazz,
one?
Utah.
Oh, really? Wow, good for Utah. That's actually not. My 4 that I would have guessed would have been the Warriors, the Mavericks, the Lakers, and I would have said Phoenix because they're good
Oh, I'm
right
sorry.
now.
Yeah. Sorry. Mavericks are on there. I missed them. Yes.
Mavericks
You're right. There are
okay.
3. Yeah.
Dallas,
Okay.
I mean, because it's more just, again, it's with the big city. Dallas is a big city. Phoenix is a big city. There's just, and again, as long as they're remotely competitive, you just naturally can draw more people in.
So the top 10, I'll read them down, which I think the list in general is relatively surprising to me. Number 1 is Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is Philly. Number 3 is Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 is Dallas. That's the one I missed because I'm an idiot. Number 5 is Boston. Number 6 is LA. Number 7 is Toronto. 8 is Utah. 9 is New York, New York should be higher, but it should be higher. Like, to me, it's New York. And I get it, the team's not that great, but
you
still.
watched the Knicks this year?
I know. And then number 10, Cleveland.
Right? Look, big surprise. I guess Cleveland obviously would be the biggest surprise there, sneaking in at 10. The rest of those are big cities. Like, that's just at the end of the day. Like, they're big cities. Their teams have been successful both this year and in the past recently. Like, they all, for the large part, have star power. They're all competitive, like we said. So it's not like there's no bad teams in that mix, too.
No, it's just crazy.
Good for Cleveland, man. That team deserves the love.
But it's still crazy that, like Warriors are 11, Suns are 17 on
Warriors
this list.
being 11 is wild. Like, the Warriors being 11 makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah. So either way, I just thought it was
everybody out finally.
Right. Just interesting. That something that I saw as we were talking about the Pelicans, because that was what the fans were obviously arguing with Perk. But more power to Perk. Like, Perk went and ate his crow on that. Like, he joined it and he let people yell at him. Like, power to him for doing that, because that was going to get ugly.
Just like, because if you're, well, you got to just fall on the sword at that point. Like, look, when you're on television all the time, like you and I do the podcast once a week, but for people that are on, talking about sports daily, like, you're just going to say something wrong and incorrect at some point. Like, it's bound to happen.
I say it every podcast, I feel like.
I mean, dude, like, we've had takes that have aged super well this season. We also have takes that have aged horribly this season. Like, me saying that DeMar DeRozan was the most overpaid signing of the offseason. Like,
I remember that.
Wow, that is horrible now. That has aged so poorly already. Some other ones have aged a little better.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, either way, I don't know. Are we calling this Callgate now? Like, are we putting a name on it?
Look, I hope Zion gets better. I want him to play in New Orleans. I think if Zion can get on the basketball court, I think a lot of this can be smoothed over pretty quickly. And I hope to see him on a basketball court sooner than later, because we've been talking, everything we talk about with Zion is off the court. I want to see Zion play basketball. That's the most important thing for everybody right now. All right, who's balling, who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like to start with the good before the bad. So, Justin, I'll start with you this week. Who is balling?
Okay. So mine's going to be like a few-parter here. Mainly, because for anybody wondering, as of recording this podcast, last night was the first game that we got with James Harden and Joel Embiid, and it was a good one. But really, it's from the few comments.
I'm feeling how good of a game it was, if you catch my drift.
Yeah. It was from the few things that I want to highlight that's ballin' to me is, well, James Harden tied Ben Simmons' career threes in one game with 5 minutes and 2 seconds left in the game, which actually Karl Anthony Towns was on him. It was actually a really good shot. But also Joel Embiid's comment after the game where he said it was probably the most wide open I've ever been. And then we also got this interaction, which I wanted to make sure to pull up, where just look at Harden.
It's already great. Like, look.
was just like, bro, you are chugging that water there.
It's not even like that's not even like a chug at that point. It's just a vacuum. Like he's crushing. It's like that looks just like where it's like, no, I am like this water gets in me immediately. Like that's not even.
Harden's looking at him like, what are you doing?
Bro, I'm telling you, the Harden side eyes just remain elite. Where he's he's giving that look.
That's like
incredible.
someone tweeted because of the Lakers lost to the Clippers, but someone tweeted LeBron. They said if LeBron makes a face like someone just farted, you know it's over.
Bro, what's up with the Clippers too? By the way, do the Clippers just intentionally like getting down 20 points so they can win all?
I guess.
They have like 4 or 5 wins at this point where they were down more than 20 points late in the game. I have a really spicy Ty Lue take that I might save for another time too. I'm flying it. I think Ty Lue might be the best coach in the NBA, like the whole league. I think he is that good of a coach right now. Like what he's done with the Clippers without their top 2 guys, winning the title in Cleveland against that 73 Warriors team. Like, I think Ty Lue is that dude. And people just kind of disrespected him as somebody who was just there to coach LeBron when it's like, no, that dude can coach his ass off. And I hope people are appreciating the job there now, what he's done with the Clippers this year.
Well, yeah, we'll see what
he's got them playing hard every night.
We'll see where it goes. I mean, right now they're about 500, so we'll see what happens
without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George.
I know that's what I mean without their guys. So we'll see. Crazy. But either way, so what's your balling?
So balling for me this week again because we're just coming back, so you don't want to get too crazy with it. We've only had a few games since post All-Star break. But balling for me is Dejounte Murray, 31 points, 14 assists, 13 rebounds, hell of a triple double in the Spurs win over Washington. This is coming off the All-Star replacement bid for Dejounte Murray, and I think I just remember on an episode earlier this season when we talked about the Spurs, it was just kind of like, what are they doing? Like, do they have a piece? What's the direction? Who's a keeper? Who's not? And Dejounte Murray, who missed a whole season with the ACL 3 years ago, but this is a guy who the potential has always been there. But you kind of wondered if he would almost break out to see if he really is he a nice piece or is he a build the franchise around foundational piece? He's really done a job more being the latter and proving that he's a foundational piece this season. He's just having an excellent campaign.
Well, and I think if I remember correctly, when we were talking about potential Sixers trades, he was somebody that I was like, if they're going to do a trade with the Spurs, this is someone I want them to target, And
it's funny because I was probably lower on it at the beginning of the season. Like to be quite honest, I didn't know if he'd be worth it. I didn't know if he was good enough. Now, obviously in hindsight, yes, I would have definitely traded Ben Simmons for Dejounte Murray. Not that I'm complaining. We are very happy with one James Harden after one game. So no complaints there. All right. So who is fallen for you this week?
So fallen for me is another video that was actually from Shaq's podcast where he is talking with T-Mac. I want to make sure I have the volume up for this one and make sure we have it here. And I just want to hear what you say. And I guess we'll decide who's the falling here. Do you agree with Shaq, or do you agree with T-Mac on this one?
I always thought it was, as a player, if you're the baddest guy in the league, you should be MVP. Now it's, his team is in first, his team is in fourth.
I don't like that because that's not a real MVP to me.
Thank you.
But when you look at a guy that I'll say is putting up crazy numbers, doesn't really have the talent like some of these elite teams have, and he gets his team into the playoffs, whether it's a 7th or 8th seed, that's an MVP to me because if you take him off of that, they don't make the playoffs. I had a year like that, my 2003 year. I'm not playing with no other All-Stars. I think we got to the 6th seed, and I'm averaging 32 points. You take me off of that team, we're a lottery team.
Who won the MVP that year?
Tim Duncan got it that year. And you take him off of the Spurs, they still make the playoffs.
Whoa.
They make the playoffs.
No,
yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't, because a lot of those guys got their success off of him.
Bruh.
Yeah, he got double. He kicking out the Ginobili. No.
They have a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, Tim Duncan.
I'm saying, without Tim Duncan, they still are a playoff team.
No. They win games, but they don't make the playoffs.
Big.
I do like
them saying they have a well-oiled machine in Tim Duncan. That really is, because that's the thing is obviously all those Spurs guys are great and Hall of Famers in their own right, but it really Tim Duncan is the engine. He was everything. He was that guy. I get T-Mac's argument. I think he's falling in the take that he should have won MVP over Duncan that year. Like, I don't agree with that. I think he should have definitely been there. But, like, come on, Tim Duncan was killing that year.
Yeah.
It had the mix of the value and being elite best player in the league. And it's funny because, like, that's kind of the conversation that's been around DeRozan this year. Because I don't want to make this a DeRozan fallen thing at all, because what DeRozan is doing is absolutely incredible. Hitting the game winner the other night against Atlanta, just on this just tear as well, with multiple key guys from the Bulls missing right now, going all the way back to Patrick Williams, but with Lonzo Ball out, with Alex Caruso out. And, you know, I think Zach Lowe said it this week, where it was like, DeMar DeRozan is going to be the best fourth place MVP finisher ever. And that sounds so much more disrespectful than it actually is. And if the Bulls finish number one, I think the conversation is going to be, yo, how can he not be the MVP with how he kept them afloat and with them having the actual success? But there always just will be that talent level too, because I look at Giannis and I look at Embiid and I look at Jokic, and it's just like, who are you knocking out of that conversation? Well, Giannis is averaging 29 and 14 right now. Embiid's averaging 30 and 11. Jokic has the Nuggets in the 6th seed without Porter Jr., without Jamal Murray, and is putting up literally better numbers than he did during his MVP campaign last year. Like, you have to have those three guys, to me, as good as DeRozan is playing. It's like, I can't knock any of them out of that position in good faith.
Well, what's interesting, so I just pulled up it's 2002 to 2003 NBA MVP voting that McGrady's talking about there. And you look at it, so he was 4th on the voting for this one. So Tim Duncan got it. Kevin Garnett was also really close in terms of first place votes. Yep. Kobe Bryant was 3rd, and then it was T-Mac. But you look at, like, if you look at his points, like, he does have I get where his argument's coming from. He had 32 points per game.
Oh yeah, T-Mac 03 T-Mac is elite.
He had 6.5 rebounds per game, 5.5 assists per game, almost 2 steals per game. His win shares were 16.1. His win shares per 48 were 0.262. Then you look at Tim Duncan, who off just the numbers had 23 points per game, was grabbing almost 13 rebounds per game, was at literally 3 blocks a game. His win shares are just slightly more at 16.5, and then lower per 48 at 0.248. So, like, I get where he's coming from, but at the same time, it is that kind of, I do like Shaq coming to, like, a big man defense, right? Like, the big man's defending the big man in terms of winning this award. And I think there's a level to that where it's like, man, a lot of that was running through Tim Duncan. A lot of those guys were open from Tim Duncan. We even heard Embiid talk about how he's never felt more open in his career now that James Harden there. So there's a lot of that going on too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and to me, even Kevin Garnett has I get what T-Mac is saying, that he wasn't playing with any All-Stars that year, but it's like, when you look at Kevin Garnett in 03,
Garnett
he was
too.
in Minnesota, dragging them to, I mean, they were 58 and 24 that year. The second best player on that team was, I mean, it was either Sam Cassell or Latrell Sprewell or Wally Zerbiak, who were all good players that particular year. But again, like, are we really comparing them to some of these guys and the other ones? Like, without Kevin Garnett on that team, like, they're not even sniffing 58 games. That year.
And I get,
we're talking about,
but that
well
almost
down in the 30s somewhere.
But that,
so I think that furthers against T-Mac's argument. Like, KG, if you take him in the vacuum and you do the vacuum argument, then I think Kevin Garnett has a better argument there.
And I think that was what T-Mac was trying to do to discredit Duncan a little bit, where it's like, you take him off, you know. But again, like you're saying, like, okay, fine. So then that takes Tim Duncan out of the equation, but you still got Kevin Garnett in front of you in terms of this voting, at least, that you have to find a way to get past.
And it is. It's always a balance with MVP of the narrative and the numbers, because and like you said, the value in a vacuum, and because, I mean, look at the top 3 guys again with Jokic and Embiid and Giannis. If you take Giannis off Milwaukee, I just watched that team win the Eastern Conference Finals, win 2 must-win games last year to get them into the finals without Giannis. Obviously, I don't think they're winning the title, but they're not just going to plummet either. Like, the Bucks are just still going to beat a lot of teams without Giannis. Same thing with the Sixers now with Harden. Now, pre-Harden, it's a different story. I think the Sixers are plummeting down real quick. And again, same deal with Denver. Like, with Denver, with the injuries, if Jokic is out, they plummet too. And I think that, to me, is Jokic's strongest argument, is that he's putting up these numbers without his regular second and third option. Like, it's absolutely
and that's why
outrageous.
I think
he's
going
the favorite right now. I think
Jokic
is the favorite to win it again.
Jokic?
Barely, but I think he is.
And I would say too, the Harden thing, like you said, I mean that is going to hurt Embiid's narrative in terms of an MVP, and I think it already showed in the Vegas odds to win. I think they have Giannis over Embiid now because of that.
Yeah, I think there could be some cannibalization there. I think if Embiid is still putting up 30 a night, then I don't know that it will necessarily fall apart that quickly. But yeah, I mean, that element is definitely there for sure. All right, falling for me this week is De'Aaron Fox. So did you see this De'Aaron Fox NFT story? And by the way, listen to the Top Shot episode that's coming later on. But this De'Aaron Fox thing is pretty crazy. So this was his NFT project. It essentially raised over $1.5 million. It had launched in December 2021, and the official website is just completely offline now. The community's Discord is shut down. I mean, De'Aaron Fox went on Twitter and basically said, like, the project launch was ill-timed. I couldn't do what I needed to, pay attention to it the way I needed to during the NBA season, yada, yada, yada. All that is great, but it's like, this has $1.5 million. Like, De'Aaron Fox is talking about getting him a signed jersey and, maybe like a little bit of money back, but I don't know. Like, this is definitely, we're going to see how this plays out. Like, I don't want to just accuse somebody of just fraud immediately, but this is a pretty big, there's a lot of red flags around this De'Aaron Fox story.
Yeah, no, I think from an NBA perspective, you see this guy who's doing a side project. I think people are going to be like, yo, why aren't you focusing on trying to get your team to end the 15-year postseason drought? You know what I mean? Like, I think there is a level of that where people are going to be like, yo, what are you doing starting up a business or a side gig?
Josh, that's such a boomer take. I love it.
But it is.
Get in the building and start shooting jumpers. What are you doing? Get off the interwebs. Start shooting free throws.
Seriously, like, I'm sure people say the same thing about, I know Kat plays video games. I know Ben Simmons plays video games, but Ben's a whole nother situation.
I'm not mad at De'Aaron Fox for doing an NFT project. I'm mad for him for not potentially letting people get their money back if it's going to go offline. Like,
right.
$1.5 million is not an insignificant amount. I mean, there were promised exclusive chats and experiences and game tickets and stuff like that. And it's like, yo, a signed De'Aaron Fox jersey is not going to just make up if you put a lot of money into this project.
What did he call it? Crypto Fox or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I forget the actual name of it.
Either way,
not a good look for De'Aaron Fox, which I didn't even think would get us into our second half preview. But Justin, actually, we're going to just, essentially, now we're post All-Star break. We're pushing towards the playoffs. Trade deadline is past, a lot of movement, but we're going to start to see these teams, really round into shape here. Guys come back from injury. We're not going to go through every single team, obviously, but we are going to kind of talk about a couple of things.
Predictions.
What we expect to see happen for the rest of the season. But you actually have a Kings prediction, so there you go. Who thought we were going to start in Sacramento? But let's do it. What you got?
Well, it's not I don't know if it's a Kings prediction. It's something I would like to see happen, and I've already referenced it, the fact that they've got the longest postseason drought in NBA history right now. Mm-hmm. I would like to see them make a run for the playoffs. And I think now that they've kind of shifted the team around with the trades, let's see if they can do it. Now, they are on a 3-game losing streak and 4-6 in their last 10, but they're 22-39. And Trailblazers technically in that 10th seed playoff play-in spot at 25. So you're only 3 games out. And the teams in front of you are the Spurs and the Pelicans. Now, the Spurs, people should have at least a little bit of confidence in that. But, Trailblazers started hot, but we'll see if they come back down to earth a little bit. Now that all the trade stuff are done and Dame's got the surgery going on. So, like, there is a legit, for how soft the bottom of the West is, you could make an argument for the Kings to potentially end that drought this year.
Well, yeah, because Portland is in the 10 spot right now, and they've been playing extremely well. Like, we talked about Portland a little bit last episode, hanging tough, but now Nurkic is out, so I think that, again, they're just going to run out of bodies here sooner than later. And they only have a game up on San Antonio and New Orleans. Sacramento right now is 3.5 back. So I think that's where it gets tough. Like, they just have to climb a little bit too.
They do.
Like, they're a full 2.5 games behind New Orleans and San Antonio right now. Mm-hmm. I do think San Antonio is playing better basketball. All their underlying metrics are better than the Kings are. And the Kings did get better adding Sabonis. Like, in a vacuum, I think Davion Mitchell and De'Aaron Fox fit better now. And bringing in a guy like Sabonis definitely helps them on that talent front. Yeah. They got to win some road games too. If they're going to get back in, that's the other thing is, they're actually not playing that bad at home. They're 15-18 at home, but they're 7-21 on the road. I think the only one who has a worse road record right now is
The
Orlando.
Rockets.
No, that's division record. Excuse me. Detroit. Detroit is 5-25 on the road, and actually the Pacers too. The Pacers are 6-23. They have 7 wins. The Rockets have 5 more losses too, like you said. So the Rockets pretty bad on the road, but it's like that would be a start of it. You got to see if they fit in time. I got to be honest. I don't think they're going to make it. New Orleans getting CJ McCollum will boost them. Again, they're playing better basketball. They're 6-4 in their last 10. Like you said, San Antonio. I mean, San Antonio has a positive point differential.
Yeah.
Like again, a pop coach team. Portland is playing tough. The opportunity is there. Do I think they get there? I don't know, man. It's going to be close. Because the Lakers, as bad as the Lakers and as much of a mess as they've been right now, like they have a 3.5 game of their own above Portland for 9 right now. So like you have a little bit of condition, like you're just going to run out of time. Obviously, I think it would be massive for Sacramento to get in. Like you said, longest playoff drought in the NBA right now. They need it. Like they need to get back in here at some point. The way we've kind of talked about some of these other teams where I think it's going to mean a lot for them to get in and kind of take those next steps. Minnesota is a prime example in the West where it's like, Minnesota they're a cool 3 back of Denver right now, but they're in a position where they're looking to lock in a play-in spot. It looks like they're going to be in the tournament. This is what you wanted to see when you put Towns and D'Lo and Anthony Edwards together. You wanted to see them take meaningful steps. It looks like they're doing that there. In the Eastern Conference, a couple of teams like that as well, obviously. I mean, most notably Cleveland. Cleveland's the big story of the year.
Of course.
But, even with Atlanta playing better and looking like they're in position to get back in for Charlotte, if they're able to kind of steady the ship a little bit and stay afloat, that would be huge for them as well. So, again, playoff basketball matters sometimes. And even in the playing experience, like there's no bigger pressure of a game than a 1-game playoff. It's the only time you're really going to get one of those in the NBA.
I agree. So what's one of your predictions?
Oh, man, I just think the Eastern Conference, I mean, we've really talked about it, but the East is such a bloodbath. And I really don't think – I mean, the play-in game is going to be tough as it is, and I think that seeding is going to matter. I'm not scared of Charlotte necessarily the way I am of some of these other teams, but – you look at everybody 1 through 8 right now between Miami, Chicago, Philly, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Boston, Toronto, and Brooklyn. There's not a single team there where you're like, wow, that's a soft matchup in the first round. Like every one of them is playing great basketball. Every one of them has reasons to win, has star power. And oh, by the way, that's not even including Atlanta, who, if they get in this play-in games, like, look, we saw what Atlanta did last year. They got all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Nobody's going to want to see them in the first round either. Like there's the chance they could realistically upset one of these teams if they knock out of Brooklyn or knock out of Toronto. So whoever runs this East Coast is going to run a gauntlet. I am interested to see how the seeding plays out because right now you've got Miami and you've got Chicago 1 and 2. Chicago's again done a tremendous job winning 6 straight as of recording this podcast to stay afloat given all the injuries. That seeding is going to matter because if you're looking at the Sixers or you're looking at Milwaukee, there is no planet where or any of those teams would want to have that 4 or 5 matchup in the first round. Like that has the potential. There are realistically scenarios where I have to look it up. I don't think it's happened, but there's a scenario where every one of these Eastern Conference series could go 7 games in the first round.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. And honestly, it would be fun to watch. So selfishly, I'd like that.
Yeah, I mean, Boston's won 9 straight. They're really rounded into form at the right time of year. Their point differential is the best in the entire conference right now. Miami's going to add Oladipo. Again, I don't know what Victor Oladipo has left in the tank at this point after all the injuries, but just the fact that he's going to be coming off the bench, like it's not like he needs to play starting minutes either. So, and they should be getting Markieff Morris back as well in theory. It's everybody's locked in and loaded. The Sixers got Harden. The Bucks are ready to defend a title. The Nets are going to have all their new additions. Toronto's playing tough. Good luck, whoever runs that gauntlet. It's crazy. It's like it really is such a difference than the Western Conference this year.
Yeah.
Like I think anybody, the top of the West is as good as it gets. Like because for all those Eastern Conference teams I just mentioned, I think Phoenix is the best team in basketball, assuming everybody's healthy. And I think Golden State, assuming Draymond Green as well comes back and gets fully rounded into shape, that I think they're going to be right there as well. But
And I wonder with the Suns if we see any kind of like falter at all with Chris Paul being out for a little bit.
So, were you surprised? I was really surprised that Dragic went to Brooklyn. I thought it was going to pivot for sure when Chris Paul went out, that I thought he would go back to
Yeah.
Phoenix, because obviously he's in title mode right now when he has a history. Played a couple of great years in Phoenix around the time we were starting this podcast.
I remember.
Yeah, I thought for sure, just because, I mean, he would essentially take them the rest of the season then. Like, if you put Dragic into the lineup, you get, again, 6 to 8 weeks going to the playoffs, and he can play a meaningful role for them off the bench. Just a little surprised by that on the buyout market. I mean, obviously, like, he's got a great opportunity in Brooklyn as well. Don't get me wrong.
I agree.
I thought when Chris Paul went down and that got announced, that would cause kind of a last minute pivot there. So.
Well, and so my last prediction or thing that I want to ask, because we saw a lot of it last year with coaches being fired, and we already saw it with Luke Walton in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we see another coach fired before the end of the season?
No, I don't think before the end of the year. Not unless something gets just insanely toxic. I mean, Tibbs is for sure on the hot seat the way that the Knicks year is gone.
Sure.
And this Kemba Walker situation has the potential to get kind of bad since they didn't let him go. Like, he's not going to play the rest of the year. The Knicks made it seem like a voluntary shutdown, but I don't know. It feels kind of weird for sure. It just seems like they just buy him out and let him go.
Could
I don't really.
And I know they're surging, but like, say, because Nate McMillan was like the interim last year, and I know he signed a thing, but like, if they don't make the playoffs this year, do you think there could be an angle where there's a conversation about that?
Not yet. I think it would be next year. I think next year, if they start off slow and they don't get where they need to be, he'd be on the hot seat. Again, I think it just kind of. Now, if they spectacularly bomb the rest of the year, then maybe it's a different story. And that's, any of these teams are liable, where it's like, if they fall flat on their face come playoff times, like, you could be in tune for some changes. Frank Vogel is the obvious other one. It feels like he's been on the hot seat the whole time.
Well, with LeBron, everything's heightened, you know?
Well, of course, but I think Frank Vogel has done things that haven't necessarily been great. It's also not Frank Vogel's fault that the roster is poorly constructed this way.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I mean, OKC and Houston, you're not really looking to make changes. Sacramento already fired Luke Walton. I don't think New Orleans is going to fire Willie Green. The Magic, like Jamal Mosley, he's going to stick. I mean, maybe like Indy with Rick Carlisle, but they just hired Rick Carlisle.
Yeah.
Like, that would feel weird. And Carlisle's a veteran coach. That would feel kind of drastic after 1 year. At that point, it would almost be like Carlisle is unhappy. I think Tibbs is the first one that comes to mind. I think Tibbs' seat is going to be real warm. I wonder how much is going to be real warm.
With Tibbs, though. I wonder how much flexibility he bought himself with last year's performance.
I think that's the only reason that it's probably kind of not more immediate, is because of how well they were last year. But I think if they're not well the rest of the year and they go into next year and start slow, like, he'd be definitely somebody I watch.
Okay.
I don't really think there's anybody else that's necessarily on the list. Nobody that jumps off the page necessarily. Again, it kind of depends on how teams end the season as well, but I think those two, it feels chalky just defaulting to a major market and pointing out those two teams. But it's also like, when you look at disappointments in the league, like, who have been the biggest disappointments, those two are probably the biggest in my opinion. I mean, Portland flamed out just because, and Portland got hurt with injuries as well. And I think it was kind of, the writing was on the wall there.
Mm-hmm.
New Orleans has been disappointing in the sense that Zion hasn't played. After that, like, who is it? I guess Indy. Like, are we talking Washington at this point? But Bradley Beal's out now. But I guess Washington. Like, I don't know. There's nobody else that really jumps off the page there. I think the only other thing in terms of, like, just going back to the West, I think we're probably at the point where it's weird because I think the Final Four is already set. I don't want to disrespect Dallas. As I'm about to disrespect Dallas, but like, I don't think they beat Utah, in my opinion, in a 4-5 matchup. Like, and I think that'll be a big win for Utah. Utah will have the most pressure in the sense that if they don't get out of the second round this year, if they don't make a conference finals run,
You got to do
I
something.
think there's going to start to be some questions about like just how far the team can go. Like they've had a couple variations of it now. Um, I'm not saying you do anything drastic, but I think the pressure in terms of, or especially from Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, will ramp up a little bit. Um, Memphis obviously is playing with house money, but I think Memphis is going to win a first round series for sure. And I think nobody is going to want to play them in the second round, especially if it's the Warriors, the way that they've played each other this year. Like there's been some spice, there's some rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
I am personally rooting for that second round series in the Western Conference. I think that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, Utah just might be in trouble if they run into Phoenix. Like that's the other reality is like, in my opinion, Phoenix is the best team in the NBA right now, at least. Again, assuming everybody's healthy. Like I do think Phoenix would beat Utah, and I don't think it's the end of the world for Utah. I just think again, it's more of because I do think Utah could beat Memphis, and I think Utah could certainly push Golden State, and you could talk me into them beating Golden State more than you could with Phoenix. But I do. I think it's weird in the sense that, I mean, Dallas is the only one that I think could shake the mold a little bit. And maybe if Murray comes back, maybe if Jamal Murray gets back in there real late, then Denver changes a little bit. But it does feel weird in a sense where, like I said, as much as I feel like the Eastern Conference is going to be so unpredictable and so much of a wild card with all these matchups where it's really going to matter in terms of seeding.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the West, like you do have a definitive line there where it's like we kind of know who's going to win, get through the first round at least, and that's where. And hell, I would argue there's even a tier after that because as well as Memphis is playing, like I do think the West is pretty teed up for Golden State Phoenix Conference Finals, and at that point we'll see where we go.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree, which is kind of surprising because I feel like, in years past, in the 9 years we've done this, it's usually the Western that's the stacked one and the Eastern one's kind of chalky.
I mean, we're talking about usually like the 8 through really the 7 through 10 in the East is just always pretty bad. And I mean, Charlotte and Atlanta are both under 500 right now. But again, like this is an Atlanta team we just saw go to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Like this is not a bad team if they get in the play-in game.
Mm-hmm.
I think I guess if I have play-in predictions, if it falls the way it currently does, I think Atlanta would beat Charlotte in a play-in game. And at that point, it just gets tough at that point because like you're running either Brooklyn or Toronto. I think you would hope to get Toronto, as crazy as that sounds, with Brooklyn being 2-8 and 7-3. Like I'm going to want to avoid the team with Kevin Durant every single time. I do think Brooklyn will win that 7 seed. Toronto, assuming they finish where they do, behind Boston, behind Cleveland, I think would be 8. But it's like, yeah, that's a really good matchup. Like whoever, I don't know which one of those teams would win that matchup. I probably would lean Toronto a little bit over Atlanta right now.
I think so too.
But that is kind of a coin flip matchup where it's like, yeah, you can see that going either way. And whoever comes out of that is going to be a really tough first round matchup where it's like in the Western Conference, I don't really feel that way. Like Minnesota, the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Trailblazers, like whoever those two teams are, I think Golden State and I think Phoenix are going to have minimal issues dealing with them in the first round. And I think Memphis as well, just with Denver being limited with their ceiling, I think Memphis should roll as well in the first round.
I agree with you.
Well, thank you everybody for listening to this episode of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. Appreciate you guys as always. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad, or read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Stitcher, Google Play Store, Spreaker, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon Music, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us. And hey, stay tuned for the midweek episode. We're going to be dropping this. We're going to do some NBA Top Shot. It was, spoiler alert, we had a lot of fun. We're definitely, both of us are pretty excited for this episode to come out as well. So stay tuned to your podcast feeds. We'll have that coming for you guys as well. And that one specifically, like I know we always tease watch the podcast on YouTube. That's probably a good one to watch on YouTube, by the way. Like it's going to be great in audio form no matter what, I promise. Like you'll have fun with it. You'll roll along with us. But like, we actually open the packs on YouTube. Like you'll see the plays themselves. So it's better, maybe a tiny bit better than our descriptions of them per se.
Just a little bit better.
Just a tad. So watch the podcast on YouTube. Be number 33, which is apparently the greatest number in NBA history. It feels like, I guess 23. I guess when Jordan and LeBron are 23, as long as they've been, it's hard to pick against that one. But like, man, 33 is loaded.